Hello, everyone. This is Stephen with the Would Somebody Testify podcast. Today I have with me Brother Misty and Walter Self. Greetings.
Greetings to you.
Greetings.
Okay, and he wanted me to say this, that second voice you hear, that is not Sister Misty. That's Brother Walter.
The girly sounding one is the husband.
He did for Brother Mike Blue at youth camp, imitate Little Mary, and
won the competition.
He said "Whatty," and he won.
Okay, so for those of you who want a quick summary before we go, Sister Misty had struggled with depression as well as migraines for a number of years, so that's why they're on. So, how do you two want to start?
That's a very good question. We were kind of nervous to do this, but God gave us some miracles last year, and we are extremely grateful for it, and He deserves all the glory for it, so Brother Stephen invited us on his podcast, and we figured that would be a good way to get it out there. So here we are.
Okay, Brother Walter just gave a thumbs up. I don't think he's going to be... For those of you who know him and know him as a talkative, you may be surprised at how much or little he talks.
We both get a little on the stage fright side, and we are over here in a corner with just the three of us, and yet, there's microphones, so we're still a little bit nervous, so forgive us if we kind of stumble through this a little bit, but I guess I will start by, I kind of wrote out my testimony because I'm not very good at being on the spot, as everyone who knows me knows. So I guess I'll just kind of read it, and we may kind of stop and talk a little bit, kind of expound on some things maybe, if that works.
We'll see. That
sounds good to me.
Okay. So today is February the 16th of 2024, and it has been almost a year since God healed me. And to be able to sit here and say that God healed me of depression is an extremely profound thing, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that. But it was real depression, clinically diagnosed depression, and I've battled it most of my life. And in my experience, depression doesn't just get better for no reason or go away on its own. God would help me over the years, and I would feel better for a while, but I always came crashing down. Every time I got better, it was only because God pulled me out of that pit. But this time, He didn't just help me. He didn't just make me feel better for a few weeks. This time, He healed me. And to really show how big of a miracle it was for God to heal me, I'm writing down and being on this podcast of what God healed me from. I'd battled depression for just about as long as I could remember. I didn't know it was depression or have a medical diagnosis until I was in my mid-20s or so. When a doctor finally figured out what was going on, I was relieved in a way to at least know that there was a cause for what I was feeling and that I wasn't losing my mind, unlike what a lot of my friends would probably think. Sorry, I lost my place. The doctor wanted to put me on medicine right then, but I spent several years going back and forth about taking anything. I knew that there was a long list of negative side effects with antidepressants, and I was kind of scared of that. I knew that I could take a medicine and it might not help, so I would have to change the dosage or try a different medicine. I knew that without being healed, I would potentially have to be on a medicine for the rest of my life. Side note, my dad was on antidepressants until he passed away, and they didn't really do him any good. The depression wasn't easy to deal with, but in my mind, it was easier to just deal with it than it was to try medicines that didn't work. And like I said, there's a stigma with taking antidepressants, especially in church fellowships, and I didn't want to be part of that controversy or a statistic. But over the last several years, the depression had just gotten worse. My lows were lower than ever before. I stayed lower for longer, and no matter how much I prayed, I couldn't get out. Depression is a mood disorder with a lot of symptoms, and I was dealing with a lot of them, and they were bad. I had dealt with these symptoms for years, but I hit my lowest point ever towards the end of 2021. I couldn't sleep. I was tired all the time. I didn't have the energy or motivation to get up off the couch to do anything. Every task looked too big, so most things I couldn't even get started. When I did get up, I felt like I was moving underwater. My task list was never finished, and I was completely exhausted at the end of the day. I couldn't concentrate on anything, yet my mind wouldn't stop racing. I didn't have an appetite, but I also couldn't lose weight. Go figure. My body physically hurt all the time. I had headaches, and I had migraines, and I had some other health issues going on that I had to face every single day. And they looked impossible to fix, which would have been discouraging enough without the depression, but with it, I felt completely hopeless. I had no interest in doing any of my normal hobbies. Nothing sounded fun, and it was hard to laugh. I didn't want to go anywhere, but I also felt restless while at home, and I didn't want to talk to anyone. My brain felt so scrambled at times that I didn't feel like I could hold a conversation. Going to church or camp meetings was hard because I felt like I had to put on a face like I was okay, and I wasn't okay. I was surrounded by friends, and yet I felt completely alone and anxious. My husband and I were in the middle of a couple of frustrating situations that were causing a lot of extra stress. I felt like the stress was crushing me, and I couldn't handle it. My anxiety was worse than it had ever been. I couldn't stop worrying about things, and at times it was hard to breathe. I prayed all the time, but it felt like my prayers weren't making it above my head. And almost every thought I had was followed by a negative thought. Every situation that came up, all I could see was the negative of it, like a positive didn't even exist. If I happened to be in a decent mood, the smallest thing could send me spiraling downward. My nerves were so bad at one point that if I so much as dropped my keys, I could get irrationally angry, my mood would go through the floor, and my day would be ruined. Any small thing that came up would make me feel so stressed out that I didn't feel like I could go on anymore. Life got incredibly hard there for a while. I felt like crying all the time, and I did cry multiple times a day. And I would try to pull myself together before my husband got home, but I couldn't hide it from him. And to top everything else off, we were at that time about 12 years deep into a battle with infertility and really low on faith. And I won't elaborate on that right now because it's a subject all on its own. But the roller coaster of emotions and physical symptoms that it brought did not help my mental state. I was drowning in overwhelming thoughts of self-hate and worthlessness. I felt completely hopeless and exhausted when thoughts of who would care if I weren't here started tormenting my mind. As irrational as that sounds, at the time, all I could think was that my husband and my mom were the only ones that would truly care. And I got scared. I know where those thoughts lead, and I got scared. Those thoughts lead to suicidal thoughts, and I was in the beginning stages of having them. I'm a Christian, and I know what happens to people who commit suicide. And I didn't want to do that, but I was getting more and more tired all the time, and I didn't feel like I could take it anymore. And as harsh as my thoughts had been over my whole life, they had never been that bad before. My childhood and teenage years were rough because my family was dysfunctional. I had bounced around between parents and grandparents several times. I was stuck in living situations that I hated and had no way out. So, long story short, I spent most of my growing up years feeling like nobody really cared much about me, which made the lies of nobody would care if I was gone easier to believe. I don't know if they knew just how bad it had gotten, but my church prayed for me, and God really helped me out of that. I did a complete 180 and was higher than I'd ever been, and it felt really great for a few weeks. Then, for no reason at all, other than that's how depression works, I crashed again. And I spent about a year kind of just existing and dealing with all the same old stuff. And then, when life started looking too hard again, and those horrible, terrifying thoughts started tormenting me, I knew that it was time to take something until God healed me. I took the meds in November, and my mood didn't really change much. I took the meds in December, and I was able to get through the holiday season feeling kind of somewhat normal. But January was bad. It was the absolute worst of it all. I spent pretty much all of January on the couch, getting up to do only the absolute bare necessities. February wasn't much better. I was taking medicine just to try to feel a little bit better, and it wasn't working. And I felt even more hopeless because the medicine wasn't working. I had an appointment with a psychiatrist to go down that road that I didn't want to. We were going to look at changing the dosage or changing the medicine. I'm sorry, I just completely lost my place.
Back up.
Sorry, Walter's trying to help me find it on my computer. Oh. See, I even have it written down and I still get nervous. Brilliant idea for having us on here, Brother Stephen. Depression was affecting every area of our life. I couldn't find words to pray anymore. I couldn't concentrate on reading my Bible. The two things that should help me is praying and reading my Bible, and I couldn't do them. I knew that I was going to serve God no matter what, but I was getting weaker every day. My husband has put a lot of effort in over the years trying to make me feel better, usually by trying to make me laugh. And he wanted so desperately to fix it, but he couldn't. And too many times, my mood affected his mood. He never knew what I would be like when he got home. I would be crying, angry, or listless, and he felt helpless because there was nothing he could do, and it started to pull him down too. I was miserable, and I was making us miserable, and we were getting to the end of our rope. One Sunday night, we're not 100% sure, but we think it was the weekend before God came by and healed me. We had a good service, and for no reason at all, on the way home, my mood crashed in the time it took us to get from church to home. My amazing husband tried to make me laugh, and it didn't work. My response was very bad, and he snapped. He is not proud of this at all, but in a not very nice way, he burst out that he was tired and can't keep propping me up anymore. He instantly regretted saying it because he knew good and well that I couldn't help it. He held me and we cried. You're not supposed to go to bed angry with each other, but we did that night. We went to bed angry, exhausted, and defeated. And I felt like it was never going to get better. And I don't have the words in my vocabulary to express how helpless and hopeless we felt. When a ship is sinking, they send out an SOS call and hope that someone will hear it and come to their rescue. Because if they don't, they go down. And there have been several times over the years that in my darkest moments, all I could say was SOS, Lord, and he would come by and help me. And that night was the darkest I had ever had, and literally all I could pray was SOS, Lord. God knew exactly where we were, and we couldn't handle any more, and that we desperately needed help. So on Wednesday, March 8th of 2023, Brother Russell McDonald came to preach at our church. And the only thing that Walter and I have ever heard of Brother Russell was that there were 5 couples who couldn't have children. We hadn't even heard the whole story. Did he preach, pray over them, prophesy? All we knew is that God used Brother Russell in that service, and those 5 couples later testified of being able to have children. And most people that know us know that Walter and I haven't been able to have children for almost 15 years now. And several people told us that God has used Brother Russell many times in many ways, and if he says something to you, you can take it to the bank. God has promised us over and over that he's going to give us children someday, so we were hoping that he would have a word for us from the Lord about it. He had word from the Lord that night, but it wasn't about children. He preached a simple message that night on you don't have to stay down. He talked about being oppressed by the devil, and he never actually said depression, but he alluded to it the whole message. And for his altar call, he said that if you've been oppressed, I want you to come up here. He said the Bible says, healing all that were oppressed of the devil. He's going to heal you tonight of oppression. Not just touch you, heal you. He's going to heal you tonight of oppression. I want you to step out right now. I'm talking to you. The Holy Ghost was so strong in that church, and Walter and I both knew that he was talking to me. And Walter was ready to drag me up there if I wasn't ready to go on my own. But I knew he was talking to me, and I went up. Brother Russell looked right at me and said, you stood up here a while ago, and I saw it just as sure as you standing where you're at right now. Then he opened it up for anybody else who wanted to come up for prayer. They anointed us, and we prayed for less than 20 minutes, I think. And I remember praying, Lord, when you saved me, there was a change, and I knew I was different. When you gave me the Holy Ghost, I knew I had been changed. I had speaking in tongues as evidence. I'm not feeling anything right now, and I would love to feel something. But nothing big happened. It was good, but just a quick altar service. The Lord was there, but we didn't pray all night. Nobody shouted, or if they did, I didn't notice. I didn't feel like anything had changed, and I felt a little discouraged. I didn't trust my own faith. But on the way home, I told Walter that I was going to throw the pills away, and he said, okay. So the next morning, I took the pills out of my weekly container. I put them back in the bottle. I showed him, I shook it, and I threw them in the trash. He said, okay, do what you feel. I said, I don't feel it right now, but we're going with it. Walter said he noticed a difference right away. It took me a little bit longer than that. Anytime we talked about it over the next couple of weeks, I didn't openly admit that God healed me, and he told me I was downplaying what God did. And I wasn't trying to downplay it. I was just in shock. And you might say, well, duh. You asked God and he answered your prayer. But when Peter was in prison, the church was praying for him to get out, and they were shocked when he was standing on their doorstep. It took them a minute to realize that God had just answered what they were praying for. And there was something visible to their human eyes. And the devil tries to make us think that our prayers are too big or too hard, and that it's impossible for the thing we're asking for to be done. We can battle it for years, and then when God does the thing, we say, did that really just happen? And I wasn't questioning God, but I couldn't help but wonder, is this real? Is it really gone? If someone is walking down the street with a broken leg, you can see the cast and crutches and know that something is broken. But a battle with depression, the broken is on the inside. You can't see it. You can only see the results of the symptoms. We finished praying that night, and you couldn't see anything on the outside like a broken leg had been mended. And Walter knew that I had been healed, but I wanted to be sure before I testified of it. And now I get to testify because I'm absolutely sure that God healed me of depression.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite noticeable.
That very first morning on March 9th, my first coherent thoughts after waking up weren't that I don't want to get out of bed because I don't want to face the day. And I can still wake up and my first thoughts aren't, I can't do this anymore. I can't face the day. That's completely gone. I didn't lay awake the night before too anxious to go to sleep. And the massive anxiety that I dealt with for years is gone. We still have stressful situations, but I don't feel like I'm drowning in the stress. I'm not tormented with a constant barrage of negative thoughts. I no longer feel completely overwhelmed by anything and everything. I don't feel like crying all day for no reason. I don't feel like I'm losing my mind, contrary to what my husband probably tells me all the time. God took all of that and so much more away. My mind was in a constant battle, and God won.
Thank you, Lord.
I know that in my writing and in this podcast, there's no way that I can possibly get to everything that I dealt with. But I hope that I can just impress that it was dark and absolutely impossible to get out of without God. It was impossible, but my God did it. He did something that was so big that I can't even understand it all yet. He healed me of depression, and I haven't had a migraine in a year and almost 8 months, and I'd had I'd had about 2 to 4 migraines a year since I was about 14.
If not more.
If not more, sometimes more. But I would go easily day after day, sometimes week after week, with a constant headache. I have a headache today, but it's totally different. They are so much less frequent.
Not migraines.
They're not migraines. They feel different. They're not as painful, and they're a lot easier to get rid of. And I want to thank the Lord for that too. It was a really big thing. If you've ever had a migraine, you know that pain, and it's gone. The depression, the infertility, the health problems, and the headaches and migraines, they were all separate issues, but they also fed off of each other and were somewhat interconnected. And also, since writing out this testimony, God has healed some of the other health problems that I've had. And some are not completely gone, but they are so much better. And I just can't explain how big that is. And we're still praying for children, and God has given us some promises over the years that we're holding on to. And we still have some really big prayers that only He can answer. But our God is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think. And He proved it again when He healed me of depression. He took that battle and that plethora of symptoms away, and He deserves absolutely all the glory for it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's easy to say God can do it, but it's somehow so awe-inspiring when it's for you. I've had a little bit of that myself. I haven't had the same constant, insurmountable feeling problem.
Yeah, we are still blown away that God did it for us. I mean, we're nobody. We're Walter and Misti Self, you know?
Feel like the least of these most of the time.
Yeah, and
So
it was something so big. I mean, like I said, it affected us every single day. And I can't explain just how dark of a place that we were in. And knowing that God stepped in and took care of it, in an instant, one altar service, it was gone. It's just incredible to us.
To give a little bit of context on just how much of a change it is, I can be a bit slow to notice things.
Me too.
And I'm the kind of guy, I probably didn't pick up Sister Misty was having depression, but the person that I've known and been friends with for years and the person now, there's a huge difference. This Misty Self is much brighter and merrier. Despite her humor that she's had as long as I've known her, this Misty is somehow happier on a much deeper level than I can wrap my head around. As I said, who am a little bit slow to catch on and see what's going on around me, it's no wonder Brother Walter here didn't take long to figure out, she's healed.
Well, I live with her. Oh, but the thing is, my wife was very good at putting on a face, very good. And I knew, she's my wife. I knew that she was putting on a good face. She would laugh.
We used humor a lot to mask the pain.
It was very, what do you call it? It was a facade for really how bad it was. Just there was times where it was very, very bad, as she said. And I'd come home and from work, put my stuff down, give her a kiss, and just go outside till sundown, till just about before bed.
He'd come in for dinner and then he would go back outside.
It didn't help the issue, but it got to where my coping of the situation was to avoid it. And it wasn't a good spot for when I was supposed to be her support. My coping was to mask it by avoiding it. And that was one of the hardest times. That was happening around the time that right before she got healed, when we were at our lowest in our marriage too. We couldn't take it much anymore, and yeah, that was, the Lord knew that we were at the end of the rope. That's for sure. And we were just one prayer away. That's pretty much what I'd like to say is, you feel like you're at the end of the rope. It was one more prayer. That's all it took, was that when the Lord's ready, He'll do it.
We were there whenever, you pray for something over and over and over again, and you don't get an answer, you don't get an answer, you don't get an answer, and you get more and more discouraged. But yeah, like Walter said, we were one prayer away. That's all it took. And it's like, you think of all of the years that we were praying for help, praying for healing, just praying for even just help. Like, I can't make it through the rest of today if I don't have help. And we prayed one more time, and we have never, ever had to pray over that depression again.
Ever again.
It's completely gone. But like Walter said, he would get home from work and he would go outside, and someone out there might be thinking that, well, that's no way to support your wife, but
it's not.
It wore down on him too. Like I said, I was miserable, and whenever he would come home and I would be crying and there's literally nothing that he can say or do to make it better, it didn't make him feel good. Knowing that, I'm the man, I'm the husband, I'm supposed to be able to fix this. And
well, I felt the pain too. It was very painful for me.
Yeah.
Hopelessness that she felt, I felt even more so. I don't know about more so, but I felt it very strongly too. Because I'm supposed to be the support figure, and there isn't much I could do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But on a lighter note, because I'm tired of about tearing up. I don't like to cry. Anyway, so shortly after she got healed,
About a month, I think, roughly.
she don't even know what I'm going to say. She thinks
We've
she
been
knows.
married a long time. I know what he's going to say.
No, anyway, so shortly after, probably a few weeks, the spring had come around and I was getting ready to put garden in, and she was sitting around and she pulled out a lawn chair and just sat out there with me. And I was like, man, she really is healed. She'd never go outside, it felt like, ever for years. So I was like, wow, wait, she really is healed. And then shortly after that, there was a stray cat that came around at the ranch where we live. And she adopted this cat. And I was like, well, there's another proof that she's really healed, because she would have threw a shoe at it before she got healed of depression. And anyways,
Walter likes to say that whenever I got healed of depression, that he got a brand new wife, and he's all proud and tells everybody, I got a brand new wife. And I will turn and look and tell whoever he just told that
yeah, brand new husband.
I got the short end of the stick. I didn't get a new husband. He is still the same.
Oh, yeah. He's kind of a tall stick.
He's kind of a dipstick.
That too. But anyways.
For anybody who doesn't know us, we have been called Paul and Johnny many times over the years.
Anyways. But yeah, but the Lord done a wonderful work. A very wonderful work for us.
It was absolutely a miracle, and I just wish that I could actually describe how big it was. But
I told my wife once, it's hard to describe darkness. You can describe light a lot better than you can dark. You can see light and lighter things better than darkness. And that was probably the hardest part. And a lot of people didn't realize how bad it was.
we didn't talk to people
because
about
it's
it.
something you don't. We're both kind of private people, and all that people really knew was what they could see. And on the flip side of that, people see a lot more of my wife. Well, they see my wife who she is now a lot. You're gonna have to cut this because I've lost my thought. Anyways, lost my thought. Anyways, carry on.
Carry on, he says.
I lost my thought.
Ask us a question, Brother Stephen, and he might be able to remember something. We'll see.
I lost my. Yeah. I was going to say that people like Stephen and other people, they see the effect, the real effect of the healing as well. Not just us, but it's very evident.
People that probably didn't even know I had depression back then can tell a difference now.
They can see the difference between the facade and the true joy. And as good of a mimic as you can be, or as good as covering it up, when people really see the healing, and we give him all the praise. It's very humbling to know that the Lord would reach down and do that for us.
Yeah, two people that didn't deserve it, but the Lord knew that we needed help.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you guys for coming on, and for those of you listening, there's more background noise than normal because this is done at Raisin City Camp Meeting, and we rent out the fairgrounds. So I'm in a corner of I don't remember what this building is called, but we're using it as a church, and we eat in the room next to it.
We have these nice big cardboard makeshift walls
Divider
and a
walls.
quilt behind me.
In an attempt to make it a little less echoey, but you can't do much about the actual noise. But hope you still enjoyed it, and thank you for listening. So for those of you listening, we got to talking a little bit after we kind of sort of stopped, pushed our mics back. So some of this stuff may be cut.
Inserted.
Yeah, cut.
We are not comfortable talking in front of people, and we're sitting here in a corner with Steven, and yet we're still like, there's microphones.
I'm still a hermit, okay? My wife is still a hermit.
And
we like people in small quantities.
And it takes any of you who told a story like this know it takes time for all the details to come back. So anyway, some of this last part may be out of order, but this and some stuff cut out, but all the same story.
Yep.
Yeah. If you happen to do any like intro type of thing when you put it in, just say we're not good at this kind of stuff, and there's all kinds of stuff that I'm sure that we left out, but I'm going to be kicking myself tomorrow because I'm like, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I say that? Why did I say that? I have it all written out, and still it's like maybe I should have stopped and done dialogue, but somebody didn't help me with that.
And I'm not, and I'm not so good at the format of questions. And as you said, this is bordering on the indescribable.
Yeah. People don't talk about depression very much because there's a stigma with it. And we were worried about a lot of different things over the years, but like people talk about depression and you're like, oh, they're just looking for attention. You know, they're just blah, 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 blah. And it's like, that is not what we were doing. If you know me and Walter, we weren't looking for attention.
No, and if you've never had the deep, clinically diagnosable kind, you don't realize just how deep the hole goes.
Yeah. It's like, you know, well, what was wrong? Dude, there were days that Walter would ask me how I'm doing, and it was like, I just feel blah.
About time. Most of the time, you didn't even have to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how dark it was, and I can't describe. There the last year, but especially those last few months before the Lord healed me, I cannot describe how dark it was. I cannot describe how much of a battle was going through my mind every minute of every single day.
Still recording?
Yeah, it's kind of a habit, partly because
we're going to say something that's really profound and be like, that should have made it on.
Well, and that's not just this recording. Is when I was getting general recommendations on on podcasting. They said if you do an interview, don't hit stop. In fact, Uncle Donnie and Connie, we stopped, pushed the mics back. They started talking. I hit the record button, but we had leaned back, and so the audio quality was not worth. I couldn't. It wasn't understandable, so I didn't include that. If you listen to it, you'll hear at the end. I'll put a disclaimer giving you some highlights. On
that is where I feel like we would do so much better is like whenever we think that the mics are off, then you start talking to us, then it's like you said, stuff starts coming to your mind. And it's like, that's probably where you're going to get the good stuff from us. But I love that you're doing this. I think that this is a really great idea. Well, I'm sorry that you felt the need to have us on it, but
hey, no, I do not want professional sounding people. I will sound out of place on my own podcast.
Right.
But no, it's real stories, real testimony.
Real people, real stories.
You can't explain it. I don't, like I said, I'm not after polished stories. As I said, that's too much effort.
Yeah.
Too much time. And this is reality. This is depression that
people need to hear it. They really do. I'm afraid that people don't see it because people hide it. My wife's not the only one hiding it. My wife is not the only one hiding it.
Just from the way you're describing depression, it's very much you don't want people involved.
No. Yeah.
Forget this, and then you have the stigma on top.
Yeah, because
personal.
It's like you let
personal.
people. It's almost like you let people know that you're dealing with depression.
They're gonna look at you like, "Oh, is she depressed this day?"
Then they're either looking at you with pity or they want to get involved and they want to know, and it's like, I don't want to talk to you today. I don't even want to be here. It's amazing to me that this time last year, I did not want to come down here for camp meeting.
You didn't mention though the feeling of isolation too.
Yeah,
you didn't mention that.
It's like
you can pull it back. I can.
No,
I can cut this part.
No,
out
but
and
you
splice it
talked to depth about the feeling of isolation, and
maybe we should.
The time when you need all your friends is the most.
Maybe we should, like, have a little bit of a conversation.
Well, that was a big thing that I forgot to mention.
Yeah.
And you talked about it before.
It's like it's so hard to describe because it's like you're surrounded by friends, like camp meeting. You're surrounded by friends. You're surrounded by people that love you and they care about you and like genuinely love you and care about you. You know that they do, but you can't talk to any of them because you don't want them to know. Alone, though. You feel completely alone, and you don't want them to know how you're feeling because you're ashamed of it. And it's like belittling, and with the devil just absolutely in your mind about it, he's just completely, why should you talk to them? Be like, their life is going great. They have no clue what you're going through, or they don't want to be bothered with your problems. Look, they're busy with this. Maybe that was just me, but I think that a lot of people out there that are dealing with it, they do. And you had asked me, that kind of just turned my brain on. You had asked me about, like, was it worse in 2020 or what did 2020 have to do with it?
I remember you had mentioned when you had testified at Riverbank camp meeting that it started getting worse. So I was trying to figure out when that.
Yeah. 2020 wasn't good for anybody, depression or otherwise. It definitely didn't help. But I think maybe I did not stay home. Sorry. I went shopping almost every day. I didn't always spend money, but I went into a store almost every single day because I was like, I can't sit at home by myself all day while Walter's at work. I can't do it. I was like, that is not good for me. I didn't want to be around people, but at least I could kind of be around people. But you had the excuse of, I don't have to talk to anybody. I get to stand here with my mask on and, but you were still living, you were still with other human beings, But honestly, I think that it got worse when I got the Holy Ghost. So that would have been June of 2017. I had depression before then, but it really did start getting worse after that. Those lows, I obviously made the devil mad and he decided to do everything that he could, but those lows would get longer and I would go lower, and absolutely a battle trying to pray. And it's like you get down and you have no words to pray. And it's like, well, to get out of this, you need to fast and pray. And that's how you get out. You need to worship. I've been sitting on the couch all day long with not enough energy to get up. I do not have a single word of worship in my brain right now. It's like, but the last couple of years, that's when it really got bad. We were in a couple of really stressful situations and I absolutely felt like I was drowning. It was like, it would have been stressful even without the depression, but with it, I couldn't handle it. And he was stressed out too. And it was like,
I don't get stressed.
Yeah, he doesn't get stressed because he's a man. But yeah. He
just gets worn away to nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, he would be stressed out too. And Walter's,
I handle stress in a much different way though.
He won't talk about something. He won't. If I try to talk to him and ask him, well, what are we going to do about this? He doesn't. His way of dealing with it is, I don't want to think about it. What he won't tell me is that he's sitting over here thinking about it and working on something, but it's like, can you tell me that and let me know so I can kind of relax a little bit? So there was some stuff going on and I felt like it was completely on me and me alone. And it was like, okay, Lord, here's the situation. And I am praying desperately nearly all day long, every single day. And it's like, Lord wasn't answering. It wasn't answering. It wasn't answering. It was like, there did come a point where we both kind of felt like, Lord, did you forget about us? And that's really how we felt. And just having all of the depression on top of that, it was hard. It was really, really hard, which the Lord changed some of those situations.
Yep.
And it's like, I don't know how to describe it other than to say that, like, we still have stresses come. And Walter is so worried that, like, I'm going to go back into the depression because, like,
I was for quite a while, not no more, but I was.
Yeah, because he was like, just some of the things that I was saying. And I wish I could describe it, but it was like, Wally, it's okay. Like, yeah, I'm discouraged about this situation over here. It is totally different than being depressed. It's like, and I don't know how to explain it other than to say that, like, I knew good and well that when this situation changes, I'm going to feel better. And I tried to explain that to him. He didn't get it, but he was just kind of like, okay, the
like
situation.
I said before, I'm a slow learner too.
The situation changed and I got better. Whereas when I had the depression, if I was in a situation, you could change the situation and I might kind of feel better, but I would still be down here. But the situation's changed and I felt better. It's amazing.
All right, that was the end of our after the interview. So thank you all for listening.